So this first source I used for research focused largely on the oppression that Emily was put under by her father in the town. That is pretty common through all the sources that we researched, or nearly all of them. It also talks about the lack of insight we have into Emily's life, or we being the narrator and the townsfolk. The story is told purely off of what they say and what they gossip about. We don't really know what's going on inside Emily's house, which this author references to be symbolism for Southern society at the time that maybe Faulkner's trying to impose. For instance, the house is locked up and sequestered from the rest of society. He is suggesting that maybe Southern society is stuck in its ways. It's not moving with the times. Society at large, it's a symbolism for that. It talks a little bit about the psychological trauma that Emily went through by being stuck in a house for 30 years with her dad, and it references the idea that there may be like an Oedipus complex kind of thing going on, or an incestual relationship between her and her dad, which is super gross, but it talks about how that might be evidence as to why she ends up killing Homer at the end of the story. So the second source we found is called Gender and Authorial Limitation. This was written by Renee Curry and published in 1994. This largely talks about the narrator and the role he plays in the story. I say he, they play in the story because we don't really know what gender they are. They mention that they have a bisexual narrative voice. They use aspects of what the men in the town kind of do, which is act very respectful to Emily when they talk to her, and what the women of the town do, which they're very curious about what's going on in the house a lot. So the narrator kind of uses both of those throughout their narration. This also talked about the idea of an Oedipal complex and sexual repression a little bit, which would be Emily's personal life. It also talks about, this is probably Faulkner making a commentary on fiction at the time. They mentioned that anytime there's a female protagonist in a fiction work of the time period, they're always dominated by these gender norms and gender roles that they had at the time. The narrator not having a specific gender, as well as us not really knowing what Emily is doing behind closed doors of her house, they suggest that this is Faulkner making a commentary that like women aren't only the gender norms at the time. There can be more than that. This talked about the idea of idealizing versus idolize, which is if there's like a deity or someone you respect, you look up to them, that'd be idolizing. This is Emily's idealized by the town in the story, so they're imposing their expectations of what a Southern woman should be on her, and they're not looking up to her in any way. This also talked about the discrimination of race. Tobe, the servant, he has been around forever, and he has probably a bunch of important information, and no one ever thinks to talk to him about it. This author suggests that that's because he's African American, and it's possibly Faulkner making a commentary on segregation at the time. This source was useful. It was really kind of tough to read, but it has a lot of really good insights into other fiction works at the time and fiction norms at the time, and what Faulkner is trying to commentate on through the writing of this story.
Hi, my name is Rachel Williams. I'll be talking about our fourth source, Emily Gearson's Psychopathy, William Faulkner's A Rose for Emily by Ramadi Murad. This source concentrates on Emily's psychological disorder, upcoming, and how she obtained it from her authoritarian father, who did not allow her to communicate with the opposite sex. Another key point within this source is repression that Emily contains. She denies that her father is dead for 3 days after his death because he's the only love that she ever knew, and she does not want to live life without him, and she can't imagine living life without him. The author also dives deep into the theme of obsession by the townspeople within Emily's personal life. Ramadi points out that Miss Emily has an ego life and a super ego life. Her ego life is what everyone else knows about her and sees about her, that she's innocent, she's quiet, she never leaves her house. However, her super ego is the life that no one knows about. Like, she ran a painting class in her house while a dead body of her lover was upstairs that no one knew about. And this article was published very recently in 2016, therefore it is an excellent source and it contains very up-to-date information. And it also leaves the reader to ponder about how gender discrimination impacted Emily's life, and analyzes the evidence within the story to make a connection with reality by asserting that she has a mental disorder and that this explains a lot of her unnormalized actions that she engages in. Our fifth source is Emily Gerson's Oedipus complex, motive, and meaning in Faulkner's A Rose for Emily. This source explores the true motive of the death of Emily Gerson's lover, which is repression. Emily was a typical girl, however, she did not mature normally due to her father leading her to form an Oedipal motive to him. This led to the death of Homer Barron because Emily poisoned him to use his body as a surrogate for her father because she didn't want to live without him. Similarly to our first source, Miss Emily After Dark by Thomas Arreguero, the townspeople also gossip about the relationship following the theme of obsession by discriminating against them behind their backs, saying that their love wasn't true and that they were too different to be in love because Homer was a northerner while Emily was a southerner. This is a very good source to consider when understanding A Rose for Emily. The author not only disproves other theories that have been made with textual evidence, but also provides evidence for improved theories. This source puts the reader in the mind of Emily Gerson for a better understanding of the story and why she engages or doesn't engage in certain actions. We have concluded that within all of our sources, they seem to revolve around obsession, gender discrimination, paternal discrimination, and isolation. It is interpreted that Emily developed an Oedipal complex to her authoritarian father, and she also developed abnormally due to him being overprotective, which resulted later on in Homer Barron's death. We also concluded the anonymous narrator plays a very significant role in the story, and that the townspeople look at Emily as a significant name in the community, and they don't want to do anything to upset her. However, they also gossip about her lifestyle and her relationship behind her back, basically contradicting her, seeing her as a significant person in the community. Overall, these sources proved to be very strong and had lots of information backed up by textual evidence with very recent and relevant interpretations.
I would add that these sources also really showed what we can really glean from A Rose for Emily in regard to the themes, gender norms at the time, feminism. There's just so much in this story that these sources really have kind of brought out and shown us. And thank you guys for watching our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.